You know, some classes, they don't just teach you stuff. They fundamentally change how you think. They give you a brand new lens for looking at the world. Well, that's what we're going to get into today. The story of a single college course that literally rewired how a group of students see everything. And look, this isn't some breezy, feel-good elective we're talking about here. No way. This is Research Methods in Psychology, a class with a reputation for being tough. As one student put it, it's pretty challenging and can get stressful at times. It's the kind of required course you kind of dread having to take. So that's the big question, isn't it? How does a class that everyone is nervous about turn into something that completely changes their perspective on everything? Let's follow that journey, from the initial fear all the way to that final aha moment. All right, so every hero's journey starts with a challenge, right? A dragon to slay. For these psychology students, that dragon was this class. It was this huge gatekeeper, known for an absolutely crushing workload and material that could just feel impossible. And the hurdles were legit. We're talking a heavy course load with a lot of material. It was just plain overwhelming. On top of that, you had these super tricky exams, the constant fight against procrastination, especially with video presentations, which, let's be honest, nobody really loves doing. It was a crash course in time management just to stay afloat. But then, right in the middle of all that stress, something shifted. All those abstract theories they were reading about, they suddenly snapped into focus. And it wasn't always pretty. In fact, it was often deeply disturbing. This was the moment of their ethical awakening. Okay, so think about it. The whole point of research, especially in psychology, is to help people, right? To push our understanding of the human mind forward. But there's a flip side, a really dangerous one. There's this massive risk that you could actually harm people, that you could betray their trust. And that's a huge weight to carry. For these students, this wasn't just a theory. It became painfully real when they dug into these notorious historical studies. The Tuskegee syphilis study, where they withheld treatment from black men for decades just to see what would happen. The Wakefield study, that fraudulent paper that kicked off so much fear about vaccines. And of course, the Milgram obedience study, which put people through absolute psychological torture. These weren't just case studies. They were horrifying examples of real human harm. And you can just imagine the reaction. It was a gut punch. One student said it perfectly. This is like not okay. People have been harmed just for the sake of the researcher. And in that moment, all those dry, boring ethical guidelines, they stopped being just rules in a textbook. They became shields, protections forged in the fire of these past mistakes. So that huge ethical wake-up call, it was the catalyst. It was the foundation for everything that came next. From that point on, the students started building a completely new toolkit, not just for doing research, but for thinking critically about, well, everything. A huge piece of this toolkit is the 4 validities. Now, don't let the name scare you. It's basically just a set of 4 simple but really powerful questions. Construct validity is just, are you really measuring what you say you are? Internal validity asks, did A really cause B? External is, does this apply to anyone else? And statistical validity is, do the numbers even make sense? It's a framework for not getting fooled. Another tool they got was the theory data cycle. Think of it like a roadmap for curiosity. You start with a question, then you figure out a smart way to test it. You design your study, you gather the data, and then you look at what you found. Does it back up your original hunch? Or do you need to go back to the drawing board and rethink things? It's a super logical, step-by-step way to find real answers. But maybe the most powerful tool of all was learning to see their own blind spots. We all have these mental shortcuts, right? Confirmation bias, where we only pay attention to stuff we already agree with. The availability heuristic, where we think something's super common just because we can remember an example easily. And the sneakiest one, the bias blind spot, the belief that we're objective, but everyone else is biased. Realizing you do this stuff, that's a total game changer. So, they have this new ethical grounding. They have this new toolkit for critical thinking. And it all leads to this one final reward, the pinnacle of the whole experience. And it all comes down to 2 little words. It depends. You know, we've all been there. You ask a professor a direct question and they hit you with, it depends. And you think, just give me the answer. It feels like a total cop-out. But what these students learned is that those 2 words are anything but. They're actually the whole point. It's not an excuse for not knowing the answer. It's not a dodge. It's not a sign of weakness or indecisiveness. It's actually the complete opposite. It's a conclusion.
It's the end point of critical thinking. Saying it depends means you've looked at a problem from all sides. You see all the variables, all the nuance, all the complexity. It means you've graduated from looking for easy black and white answers in a world that's mostly gray.
And this is where the magic really happens. They took this "it depends" mindset, they took their new critical thinking tools, and they walked right out of the classroom and started using them everywhere. So now, when they see some wild headline on social media, they don't just accept it. They stop and think, wait a minute. Or they get into a debate with a relative, and instead of just getting emotional, they're the ones asking, okay, but where's the evidence for that? It stopped being a class assignment and started being a way of life. And that gave them a huge boost of confidence for whatever came next. And I think this one student summed up the entire transformation just perfectly. They said, I feel like I have a new perspective on life, a new perspective on science, a new perspective on just many things. Wow. See? It was never just about learning research methods. It was about learning an entirely new way to think.
So, this journey from dreading a required class to having your whole mind rewired, it's pretty incredible. And it leaves us with one last big question to chew on. What would the world look like if we all learned to do this? To question our own biases, to demand evidence, and to be comfortable with the fact that sometimes the smartest answer is, it depends.